Welcome everyone to Edge Talk Radio. My name is Angela Zabel, that's me, and today I am here with Dr. Paul Zeitz. Zeitz, sorry. I knew I would do it. Zeitz, Dr. Paul Zeitz. And he is an author, physician, and he is here with revolutionary optimism from the heart. This is a whole new way of looking at using revolutionary optimism, doing advocacy for yourself and others. So I can't wait to get into this with Dr. Paul Zeitz. So today, who am I? My name is Angela Zabel. I have been connected with spirit my entire life, working with the team in the non-physical and also sharing messages from a multitude of realms with people. I am a teacher, coach, medium, radio show host, writer, retreat host, gallery speaker, and also do speaking engagements and work with people online with private and group sessions. I also offer guidance and classes along with the Amplified Universe monthly membership. And that is about growing our connection to us, our world, all that is around us, and our role in it. Sharing knowledge and working with others throughout the world. You can find me on all the social media aspects. The biggest thing is go to my website, angelazabel.com. And today we are here with Edge Magazine. Edge Magazine is the leading events and media resource dedicated to all aspects of holistic living, health, wellness, and the mysteries beyond, sharing information, wisdom, knowledge, committed to promoting businesses, organizations, and individuals who support our collective journey to wholeness and balance. They are currently distributed in 30 states plus Canada with over 17,000 magazines per printing and also a vibrant online magazine with over 42,000 people reached per month. Have the magazine shipped to your door, stay up to date with their newsletter, or become a drop spot. And you can find out more at edgemagazine.net. And all of these links will also be down below. And today we are here with Dr. Paul Zeitz. And he is drawing from over 35 years of advocacy, campaigning, and political movement leadership. He is the initiator of #unify movements, a movement building platform dedicated to catalyzing new, love-centered social, economic, and political systems committed to our collective repair, justice, and peace. As a new movement, #UnifyUSA was launched in 2023 as a peaceful, revolutionary political movement to co-create a United States 2.0 through urgent constitutional renewal. #Unify Movements is a new interpartisan, social, and political movement calling for constitutional renewal to co-create a next chapter of love-centered United States. Revolutionary optimism is Dr. Paul Zeitz's mission, guidance, and call to action. He is simultaneously has launched Unify, #Unify, a revolutionary movement building effort dedicated to catalyzing new love-centered social, economic, and political systems for collective repair, justice, and peace in America. He is by mobilizing more people of all types to rise in peaceful resistance to the status quo. He offers an open invitation to all faiths, ages, races, genders, classes, and political parties everywhere who desire to hold a vision and create a love-centered US 2.0. And you can learn more at unifymovements.org. And he also has his books out, Revolutionary Optimism, 7 Steps for Living as a Love-Centered Activist, Waging Justice, a Doctor's Journey to Speak Truth and Be Bold. And he has his podcast, Revolutionary Optimism. You can check out more on the website, unifymovements.com or .org, sorry about that. And he's also under Dr. Paul Zeitz and Unify Movements on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, and more. So make sure to check out everything Dr. Paul has to offer. And Dr. Paul, you have such a diverse background in everything. I've been looking at everything you've got with your political activism throughout life and working in politics. How did you go from the political aspect there to then starting this movement of revolutionary optimism. And thank you so much for being here too.
Yeah, thanks, Angel. It's an honor to be here with you, and I look forward to your dialogue. Yeah, so I'm on a journey like we all are, and I was in medical school, and I was living in sub-Saharan Africa actually in the late 90s, and I was living there during the heyday or the heightened phase of the AIDS pandemic. I had like an awakening there where I realized that this was the Holocaust of our time, or
Mm,
one of the Holocausts of our time.
yes.
And I realized that I was caught up in a system that was talking about responding, but it really was a false flag. It wasn't serious about really getting at the root of the problems. And I had like a revelation that I should make a commitment to do whatever I could to stop the pandemic, even if that meant leaving the bureaucracies that I was trapped in. And I left, came back to Washington, D.C. I've been here ever since 2000, and was part of building a political movement that led to President Bush, actually, in 2003, launching the president's emergency plan for AIDS relief.
Yes.
And literally over 40 million people have been saved over the last 21 years from massive investment by the US and other wealthy countries into programs on the ground. And it's my guiding star because everyone laughed at me, told me it was not possible, told me we could not make that happen. And I alone, I was part of a global solidarity movement of people with lived experience on the ground in Africa and Asia and all over the world who rose and implemented strategic advocacy and campaigning. They had been suffering, they had lost loved ones, or they themselves were ill. And so, from their trauma, from their illness, they found that advocacy, campaigning, and movement building was actually a healing modality. And I feel very strongly that that is an opportunity for people to really look into, depending on where they're at on their journey.
I love that. And I just want to share, I also know people before the movement really got started with the AIDS movement that you're talking about, that I lost people from AIDS because there was nothing there.
Yeah.
So the saying somebody can't make a difference, I feel people are wrong on that statement when they say one person can't make a difference, one person can't start something. I really feel this is a time for all of us to be that one person that stands up to say something, to chew a change for our world going forward. I just want to thank you for being part of that advocacy and working with President Bush on that, or Reagan, I'm sorry. I appreciate that so much. And that has been such a big help for a lot of people going forward. And that's something you hit on something when you talked about working from the heart and the healing modality. Really, everything we're doing, the world is changing. And for us to be part of that change, we're healing ourselves as we create this change and bring that movement forward. And one of the things I love is I'm going to go into something you actually, I believe is on one of your website, is you have in your book, The Revolutionary Optimism, you have a poem in the front. And there's one part of that poem that really struck me. It says, boundaries dissolve between ages, classes, and see, boundaries dissolve between ages, classes, faiths, genders, and races from all places. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, this man that we will be that I'm going to have the opportunity to interview is really looking at bringing all of us together as one, and that is so important. Was there something else that made you want to bring us together? And also, when you talked about heart, it's doing it in a peaceful way. How did you bring those two ways together? Because the anger and the division is so strong right now.
Yeah, certainly it is. So, like I shared with you, at my time in Africa in the late 90s, I was at a crossroads of awareness where I realized that what I was doing was not sufficient to solve the problem. So I had to shift direction and take action. And what I believe right now is that humanity, all of humanity, is at that crossroads. We have to interrupt the status quo of how things are operating, and we have the opportunity to transform and heal. And if we don't, well, basically, what's happening now is that my theory is that we have violent revolutions that are already unfolding with great velocity. We have streets with firearms. We have a mass incarceration system. We have economic oppression, which is a form of violence. We have
Mhm.
all the division and polarization described that is like, violent separation, and the wars that are going on, and the military industrial complex, which is $1 trillion a year of our that we're funding, largest by far of any country ever in human history. And the wars are happening in the Ukraine and in Israel, Gaza, and in many other places right now. There's 750 U.S. funded military bases that people estimate. So all that's happening, and it's leading us to more suffering, more destruction, and possible extinction. And that is all moving fast.
Yeah.
And so what I believe is that a majority of us, maybe 95%, maybe it's 99, I don't know how many, but the vast number of people of humanity are love-centered at heart. They want to have a better future for themselves and for their children and for future generations. And we're just and so I'm advocating for peaceful revolutionary transformation where we step up and we say enough is enough with this stuff, and we say we're going to recreate ourselves and we're going to do it this way. And it came out of my own journey of like suffering from hopelessness and despair. And I have traveled the world. I have gone to the underbelly of despair and desperation and suffering and poverty. And I've always come out of it like with solutions and ideas for transformation. And as we were approaching 2024, I realized that this might be the time for me to offer Revolutionary Optimism as a handbook. It's 7 steps for living as a love-centered activist. It's really tools and practices, and it's stories. It's my stories. It's other people's stories from all over the world. It's collective wisdom that I've researched and that I offer. And then there are practices, or RXs, I call them. I played Dr. Paul on that, and and I believe that there is an exhausted majority of people that are checking out of our political process, and I hope revolutionary optimism is a way for people to reconnect with themselves, with friends, with neighbors, with colleagues, allies, and find that there are a lot of love-centered people in our midst, and connect, and then figure out how to serve the broader opportunity of repair that we're aiming for.
I love the fact that when you talked about it's us coming together, it's us changing the world together. And I do agree with you. I really feel there's probably 95 to 99% of the people out there that really want the world to work for all of us, to do it in a way coming from love, coming from compassion, and using that consciousness that we all have within us to make it work. So we don't go through extinction because as we look in the past, there has been times where a lot of different peoples have been almost extinct with everything that's going on. So this is a time to realize we can make that change. And when you talk about there was something else that you had on there, which is it says, we rise not as left or right, Democrat or Republican, but as a moral fusion movement to build power, build moral activism, build voter participation, and we won't be silent anymore. So that I was such a big, powerful impact to me to say, we're here, we're all together. The differences, those aren't there for us to keep us divided, but to bring us together. And that's something so important going forward. And as you've written and gone through the revolutionary optimism, the 7 steps for love-centered activists, what do you hope readers will gain from that? And is there some tidbits in there that you can share with us today on how to be that love-centered activist?
Yeah, sure. Just to give you an overview of the book, the first three steps are it's go time, self-liberation, and accessing unified consciousness. And those are steps that are really personal. That's the inner work, that's the inner healing, the inner uh, opportunities that we have to create ourselves, or I say generate ourselves each and every day. Like I have to work on myself every day to wake up and be a revolutionary optimist. It doesn't like automatically happen. It's my choice. So that's what the first three steps are. The fourth step is called peace crafting, and that's really the heartbeat of the book. And that's about the relationship between you and me and us and all your listeners. It's the space between us, the field that we create when we're in connection with others. And I offer an easy to learn set of practices to really invite each of us to learn how to do peace crafting. And I created that new word too, like, so it's not just peacemaking, but it's an art form. So peace crafting is a form of art. And it's about how we relate to the other. Then the last three steps of the book are really about collective liberation. So it starts with imagineering, unlocking political imagination, and then manifesting our visions and our imaginations of the world that we want to create in love-centered movements. Like we're not trying to do this alone. We're trying to be with others. We're in this together. And then it goes into sparking peaceful revolutions in step 6. That's really about peaceful resistance. And that can happen from your home, your office, your school, your church, wherever you are. And a certain percentage of us probably need to get out on the streets and try to interrupt the status quo as well. But we need the support of the other majority behind us saying, yes, this is the time to rise. And then lastly, step 7 is unifying. And that's unifying within our hearts and our souls, and the collective unifying that you talked about already. That how do we look at everything through an interpartisan lens or an interracial lens or an intergenerational lens, as you said, an intergender. So we're all just humans and we're all just on this journey. And like, let's be aware that there's a lot of forces out there that are trying to separate and divide us. And some of those things are in our own minds. The oppression and separation systems are in our minds now. So we have to heal that too, in order to be in this new era that I'm imagining is happening already. It's starting to happen.
I love the fact that you have peace crafting because I agree. It is every day, it's a conscious effort of how do you want to portray yourself? How do you want to see the world? What are you going to do to create that peace each and every day? Because out there, like you had said, there's so much division out there and so much created division that has been created out here and in here because we have been taught for a long time about what that division should look like. And that's something I was so impressed with you and something I feel near and dear to my heart is going forward. This isn't about the separation. And right now we're in the US, it's very political right now. And this really isn't Democrat or Republican. This is human. This is a human movement going forward. And that's where peace crafting is really, like you had said, looking at yourself. Who am I? What do I want going forward? What do you want going forward? And as you've been working on this, how do you feel it's helped you? Because this is anytime anybody writes a book, it's also a process of your own understanding, your own learning, and getting it out there. And it's a whole journey for yourself. How has the
Yeah, that's
journey
an
of
understatement. I felt like I just told a friend of mine, I felt like I put myself through a PhD program, and the book is like is my dissertation, and it's been a great gift to me personally because I finally clarified what I was feeling inside. And I spent the time and effort to do that. And I realized at the end of the book that I actually had this revolutionary optimism spirit within me. And it got released now. And it's out there and available. And I'm sharing it as a love offering. But it kind of lifted like a burden. I don't know. There was something heavy in me that I feel lighter now that it's out there. I feel complete in a way. Like I feel like I'm not done,
Yeah.
but I feel like this is like an offering that helped me feel like I'm complete. I'm aligning my actions with my inner truth, and by sharing this on peace crafting, I just for a minute I can share you quickly how it works for me. I created this while writing the book, and I was writing the book over the past year or so. A lot of stuff was happening, like the October 7th Hamas attack. So I was immediately applying it, and I can share a story about that if you want. But peace crafting is an imaginary implant in my brain. It's a wheel that spins, and I like imagine it like going right in my brain, and it lives inside my brain just as imaginary. And it has four parts. So the wheel is spinning in four parts. And the first part is being a listening friend, really learning how to listen, asking the question, wait, why am I talking? Wait, giving
Oh,
space for others. Maybe my silence is a more powerful way of communicating my loving presence than a jumble of words. It's hard to do that on a podcast, but anyway. So, but generally in meetings or whatever, I really think being practicing being a listening friend. Second part of the wheel is about embracing multiple perspectives. The idea is I have my perspectives, you have yours. I think we have about 8 billion people on the planet. There's probably about 8 billion perspectives. I sometimes have multiple perspectives at the same time that I'm grappling with. So maybe there's 16 billion perspectives. So a lot of people, I find that a lot of people and me in the past also was like, it's my way or the highway. My perspective is right. So this is a shift from that and just open, receptive, learning, growing into understanding that there actually is multiple perspectives and embracing the beauty of the diversity of that rather than it's my way or your or the highway. Third part is the hardest one for me. It's called love speech. So no matter what someone is saying to me, or whether I'm triggered, or whether I vehemently disagree with them, I still speak with love speech. The thing I say is uplifting, empowering, counter shaming as much as I can. The last part is building trust. And trust, I used to think was a light switch, like on or off.
mm,
And now I made it like a meter, like it's a dynamic, it can go up or down. And it allows me to live with this idea of I love everyone unconditionally. I really can love everyone, but I don't trust everyone. And so, but I don't close them off permanently. I allow for the possibility that I can rebuild trust. But I'm also willing to draw lines in the sand and say, if you're toxic, I'm not going to trust you, and I don't need to be around you. If you're going to like attack me or hurt me or whatever. So it's not saying you have to, you know. So that's the wheel, and it's funny because it like works in my brain now. And I had a spat with my wife over something silly, and I can't remember if she said it first or I said it like what crafting wheel, where did that love speech go? And then we were able to laugh at it. So we're human. It's not like we're trying to perfect. We can aim for doing peace crafting in as many moments as possible, but we're imperfect. And my inner dragon, which I talk about in step 2, self-liberation, is another concept that is a big part of the book.
And one thing I've got to laugh a little bit here, just because when you talked about using that love speak in everyday conversations, in relationships we have here, it can be challenging to use the love speak. You really don't want to use the love speak, but for you to keep that in the front of your being, to keep that in the front of your consciousness, to even when things get dicey. Say when you're working, you had said you've talked with other people and sometimes you don't agree with everything they're saying. So how do you peacefully interact with that person that you don't totally agree with, that may be not wanting to do things peacefully? Is there something you do when you're interacting with someone who doesn't want to do things peacefully, but you do? What is your process through that, or what advice can you offer to people?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I was testing out revolutionary optimism, and I was putting peace crafting through a stress test by I traveled to Israel, Palestine at the end of April on a pilgrimage, a peace pilgrimage, and I spent a lot of time meeting with Israelis and Palestinians. A lot of the times they were together working, collaborating. So that was really exciting and inspiring. But then, of course, I met with people from both sides who are really in a hyper traumatized state. They've dehumanized the others. There's a lot of hate coming out of them and a lot of violence, and they're supporting the violence one way and violence the other way. They feel like that's the only thing they can do. And so I start off with those folks by really doing the peace crafting wheel, really listening, because I feel like what I experienced was when I really listened, people like calmed down a bit and they felt heard, and they relaxed a little bit. They came out of their hyper defensive state slightly. And then I move in the second part of the wheel. I hear their perspectives. I acknowledge it. I may ask clarifying questions, like if I don't understand something. And then I say, are you willing to explore the possibility that there may be another perspective?
Interesting.
And if they say, sure, then I go, well, I've been talking to this person and I've heard this perspective, and I spoke to this group and I've heard that perspective. What do you think of those perspectives? How does that fit with your perspective? And then sometimes that conversation leads to, well, my perspective is the truth.
Mm.
So then I say, are you open to the possibility that there might be more than one truth, or more that another person may think that their perspective is the truth? So trying to continue to create conversation and pathways. There's a lot of methodologies out there, like nonviolent communication, appreciative inquiry, and things like that are available as well to go deeper into this stuff. And the key for me is like that I'm not getting tripped up. I'm not getting reactive. I'm not getting nasty. I'm not getting judgmental. What I've learned is that if I'm judging them, I can't serve. I
Mm.
can't serve our collective quest for peace. So I try to suspend judgment. And then I have my own point of view. So I
Right.
do feel like I want to make sure that if space where I've listened to you and you're going to hear me, you're going to be open and receptive to hearing my point of view. And you may not agree with me. Sometimes when people are stuck in their point of view, they try to shut me down or they try to tell me what I think, which I find really fun and interesting because I'm like, I don't even know what I think. How could you know? Like I'm evolving. I just listened to you, so I'm listening. I'm learning. I'm open to new narratives, new facts, new ways of understanding reality. So you can't actually know what I think because I'm ever evolving. Anyway, so that's some of the way I think about it.
I think that's something so important for people to hear because you've been in those very tense situations with high energy that can be very challenging to work through. And to hear you talk about how you worked your way through that, I think is very important for people to hear and to know, no one's perfect. If you mess up here and there, try again, start over. And the other thing is, to bring yourself to a point of trying to stay in that calm state as much as you can. And I also like the fact that you said after hearing them, after listening to them, that you wanted them to also hear your perspective. And I think that's something that a lot of people are afraid to even share their perspective with other people because they're afraid they're going to be shut down. They're going to be attacked sometimes in that aspect for speaking what their perspective is. I think that's something with what you're doing is so important for people to know, kind of like having that bravery to make the first step. I think what you're doing is helping people have that bravery and that confidence within themselves to make the first step. So for that, I am so thankful you're doing that on that level. So important. And as you've continued to evolve and just evolving, One thing I want to say is you said you're continuing to evolve. Your opinions are continuing to change and you try not to hold judgment. And that's something for people to realize. You could have had a very strong opinion when you were younger, a year ago, a day ago, an hour ago. It doesn't mean it can't change when you understand a new perspective. And when you've been doing this, because you've had some things, I'm just hearing you've had some things that have really changed in your life, some of your beliefs. How has that changed, like yourself? Were you like, I really don't want to let go of that. I want to stay with who I am? Or were you kind of more willing to go, okay, that's who I was. That's what I believed. I'm ready to move on to something different. How was that change in your beliefs yourself as you've changed, grown, and evolved?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I want to just comment on what you were saying about speaking your truth,
Mm,
because I think that is really, really super important. And I like to talk about the importance of creating liberatory space, safe
mm,
space, where each person can speak their truth and be liberated.
yeah.
And if it's not, then don't do it. That self-care is number one. Protect yourself. If I know I'm walking into a hostile environment, I'm not going. Like I want to create the ground rules for safe liberatory space,
Mm,
or I want to operate in safe liberatory space as much as possible. I'm always willing to be with anyone, because there are these ground rules for each of us to be able to be safe and be in our respective truth. So I just wanted to make that point. It relates to the your question about the I have a section, I think it's in step five, the Imagineering, about limiting beliefs that
mm,
operate within us. And I talk about the four circles of service and the four circles of limiting beliefs. So sometimes I have to explore my mind because I have limiting beliefs in my own mind. I run stories or tapes or movies, I say, that are flowing in my mind that say, you're not good enough, your ideas are too crazy, or no one will believe you, or you're stupid, or what you do doesn't matter, things like that. And I realize that those are limiting beliefs, and I have to tame and create peace with my inner dragon that creates all that noise. Then I have had inherited living beliefs from my family of origin.
mm,
There's like a acculturation that happens. So those I've also had to explore and release some of them. And then at the community level, like we all live in a geography and there's like a culture wherever we live that we sometimes get beliefs that are from the community culture. And then there's the broader culture of our country or the world, Hollywood, our politics, and all the oppressive systems that we're living under are in our minds. And that's really the healing that we're in now, is like liberating ourselves from that oppression that is created from the systems that are running the show right now. So I think those understanding that that is happening, and as I've shifted, for example, some of my views, it can be very painful.
mm,
It's like I can experience a lot of grief. I grew up in Philadelphia, for example, and I was idealized our founding fathers for their bravery and for their uh, flowery language about peace and love and happiness and liberty for all. And then when you come down to it, they set up a constitutional order that was a caste system that was designed to oppress. It was
mm,
actually designed to keep them rich and powerful, the white male slave owners. And they created a whole system that we're still living in, actually, 237 years later. And it's painful we want to acknowledge that they were revolutionary and they did break out from British rule, but they were oppressors just like their colonial masters, and they oppressed women, people, black people, and a whole range, and the lower class white people too. So it's painful when you really have to take that on.
And I like how you brought that up because a lot of times we have to look at, for me, it was something to go back and look at. what I believed about myself and the world I lived in, when you start really looking into everything, realizing you have to kind of blow the lid off of everything and realize you have to recreate and to understand the world you actually live in. And it is not for the faint of heart as you go down that journey and realize how much has been in depth and maybe hidden or sometimes in plain sight of who we are to keep us oppressed in a lot of different ways. So learning that is not for the faint of heart. And for people, I always encourage people, give yourself time to grieve the life you thought you knew and the world you thought you knew as you discover the new world that's really here with us. So that's so very important. And I also like the fact you brought up your inner dragon. So what do you describe? What would be your inner dragon? How did you kind of get used to working with your inner dragon? What was it, and how did you come about calling it your inner dragon?
Yeah, thank you. So in step two, I really talk about self-liberation, and I talk about the journey of managing my own triggers, and that I take on being 100% radically self-responsible for managing my own triggers.
Mhm.
And I'm triggered by everything, everyone, all the time. So I'm constantly managing my triggers, because yeah, I'm not you, Angel. Sorry,
Well,
I
that's
mean
good.
everyone all the time. Yeah. Uh, I'm not being triggered by you right now. So, uh, what
That's
I
good to know.
and also, I'm a survivor of childhood sexual violence at the hands of my father. So I had early childhood trauma, and I think I was also given a lot of love from my mom. So I was under her love wing. So that was why I got out of the mess, being semi-productive in my life. And but I was struggling internally with these uh, I called it the Pharaoh factory, like a film factory, like Hollywood in my head, but it was the enslaver, and it was always ripping me down. It was always limiting me. It was always telling me I wasn't good enough, and I worked really hard to study and learn what that was. And I've learned over time that actually there are brain cells in our left brain that actually are the ones that are our protectors, the ones that keep us judging, that keep us analyzing and assessing all of reality, and that have experienced the trauma in our left old brain. And they feed off each other, and they keep us, and they kind of keep the inner dragon alive and talking. And I then I found out that there's another part of my brain which I always also knew about, but I didn't access as frequently, which was my higher self, my connected self, my when the part of myself where I see the beauty and the interconnection of all life and all of humanity, my joyful, my playful, my creative self. And what I realized is that so this is structural. There are actually neurons in our brains that operate this way. And we now know that we have neuroplasticity, meaning we have the power to recreate how our brain operates. And there's even little cells that clip away the neural pathways that aren't being used anymore. So I decided a couple years ago, or before, yeah, as probably as part of writing Revolutionary Optimism, that I am to make a shift. Instead of being left brain dominant and being dominated by the judger and the dragon, I was going to have a peace summit, and I was going to honor the dragon, honor that part of myself. I need to be protected in case of danger, so it needs to still be ready to go. But I'm letting my right side, my higher self, my peace-loving self, my peace crafter self, be the ruling my mind, and I have to tame the dragon. I tried to get rid of the dragon. It's like a whack-a-mole. You try to squash it, and it pops up again. It still pops up for me. I haven't completely tamed it. But when it's alive, I see it right away, and I then have to do my practices to remind it and remind myself that it's not making the choices for how I'm living my life. So that's a lifelong journey I think I'm going to be on as on my self-liberation. I think the alchemy of revolutionary optimism, or the chemistry of it, is that we continue to work on ourselves forward with life, and then we're able to then step into the world with peace crafting and imagineering and being part of love-centered movements in any way that we choose, and so that we can, raise the energy and bring forward this peaceful transformation that I talked about.
I love that. And it is a constant evolution. And that's the thing I like to tell people for myself is I'm never going to stop learning. I'm never going to quit changing my mind as I understand more going forward. So when people say, well, you used to believe this or come down on you for changing your opinion on something, it's giving people the grace to change their opinion because a lot of people are changing their opinions and their beliefs, especially now. Everything is just changing so rapidly, so quickly. To give people the grace to change, to have that option and that opportunity out there for people, I think is so huge going forward. And that and the judgment, the lack of judgment, I've got to say, I think you have too, with going through everything you've been going. I have been, the things that I used to judge very harshly with my own beliefs years before, I have had the opportunity to meet a lot of the people that I would have judged harshly before and understanding them now on a whole different level and letting my judgment go aside and embrace them with love and understanding. And just like you said, always making sure you're safe in what you're doing. That's something so important for people to realize. Don't put yourself in a situation where it's not safe. You really have to look at yourself, but to give yourself the option to change. And one thing I want to bring up where you touched on a little bit is I believe, and I think you may agree with me, I don't know, but I believe that out of all the touchy subjects that are out there, I feel there's always a common ground subject that all of us can find. There's usually something of common ground somewhere as a human that you can agree on to show the humanity between you. And that's something that I always look for is to find a common ground to start conversations with. And one of the things that's near and dear to my heart, which you brought up too, was you also, I believe, have a podcast out on it, which is Activists Call on Apple to detect, report, and eradicate child sexual abuse material. I believe that's an episode you have out there.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed to see all of the different subjects you're hitting on and to know we're here, we can make a difference. And for people to, there's a lot of people out there that have had child abuse done with them also. To see someone like you to move past it, and there's always something you're working through, but to move past it, to be able to be a successful individual, to be able to reach people in the world, I think that's a testament to you, to how you were able to move through it and to use it to now help others that are in those situations. And is there something, as you've gone through your own um, journey with this, has it helped you to understand more of the different intricacies between, there's a lot of different levels of child abuse out there. Has it helped you to understand those different levels? And have you found a way yourself, other ways to bring that out to people, to bring that, I'm not going to say notoriety, but to bring it out to the public so people can hear it and understand it? Have you shared, how do you feel about sharing more of that information out there to help the children that are having child abuse with them?
Yeah, thank you for those questions. So we're dealing with a societal scourge of childhood sexual violence and other forms of child abuse. The data that we have says that it's at least 1 out of 3 girls and 1 out of 6 boys is the latest data. But I think, at least on the boys' side, that's totally underestimated. And we're talking about a rapid increase in sexual predation and sexual extortion and sextortion, and that's happening with the internet. So those numbers are kind of increasing rapidly right now. And so all children really are at risk. And what people need to understand is that this can happen in the family, in the home, in the close circle of trust. That's the predominant source of where sexual violence is happening, especially for prepubescent and even postpubescent. It's also happening at schools. It's happening in sport. It's happening in religious organizations, at camps, in the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. It's literally everywhere. And so our society collectively and parents collectively have to rise and demand actually that we create a new culture to end the scourge of childhood sexual violence. I do not comprehend why we tolerate children being raped in our midst all over the place. So there's so many people like me that are ready on their healing journey to speak up and speak out. I was an advocate and an activist before I found out I had my trauma was so severe. I had an amnesic barrier for 40 years. I knew I was messed up, but I didn't really know why. And then in my late 40s, actually, I had memories that started flashbacks, and then a memory flood, and then a shattering, and then a rebuilding of myself, and dealing with the perpetrator, my father, and confronting him, and knowing that I had uncovered the truth, and understanding how it was a system of oppression operating within my family, and got yelled at, and I don't know what happened, everything that happened, or from him. So anyway, right now there that started, I think, with the Me Too movement. And women who have been sexually abused and raped, they have stepped up and asserted their own voice. Some of them, there's many, many more that don't speak up, and there's no right or wrong. If you're still private about it, that's okay. It's your choice. You get to share your journey whenever you're ready on your own healing journey, if and when you're ready. And you can keep it private if you're not ready with your therapist or with other confidants. Um, for me, I have found that speaking about it and taking a stand, a committed stand to do whatever I could to prevent other people, has helped me. That effort, that healing, that advocacy, if you will, is a healing modality for me. Because like my little Paul, the wounded little child within me, uh, you know, wants no other boy or girl to go through what he went through. And so that, kind of fuels me and energizes me. So yeah, I was joined with activists at Apple headquarters just a couple weeks ago. There were like from survivor groups, all different survivor groups coming together, and there were people in their teens and 20s speaking up and speaking out. And one of the big reflections was that people in their 80s and 70s and 60s, a lot of those folks, some of those are speaking out in Me Too, and the men are speaking out in the church abuse scandals and some of the Boy Scout scandals, but it's much less common. And it's more common when you get the younger folks, like the 30-year-olds and the 20-year-olds. Wow, that is a big shift in our societal culture. When you have teenagers and 20-year-olds saying, no, what happened to us can't happen anymore. I never would have done that when I was 18 or 20, or most people wouldn't have back in my era. So we're making progress in that way, and we have to put pressure on the tech companies, and we have to put pressure on our governments to regulate them, to require them to detect, report, and eradicate child sexual abuse materials on the iCloud and on the internet. All the companies are doing far too little. And we know they need to be they're doing voluntary methods now that are not working. They've been doing voluntary methods for 25 years. So it's like enough is enough. This is where I'm like, I can be angry. Like, why is this happening? I'm angry that our government and our companies and are not taking action to protect our children. And I believe that they should do that now. I'm calling for it to be declared a public health emergency by political leaders immediately. We have the solutions. That's
Yeah.
the other thing that I want to just give everyone optimism. We know how to do prevention. We know how to do healing. We know how to do justice. We know how to bring justice for the crimes that are being committed. So let's do it. It's go time.
I love that. I love that. And that's one of the things is I encourage people, this is the energy has shifted. Like you said, years ago, people wouldn't have spoken out. It was always, you don't say that about anything in the family. You don't say it about anything that ever happened. It's all quiet. And now it's like ripping it off and saying, we need to speak. We need to speak out loud.
Yeah. And that was
And
hard. I lost my relationship with my father. While he was my perpetrator, I still loved him, and it's very confusing. And then I was supported by most other people in my family, but then some people stopped talking to me too, so it was one of those things. But I knew I was doing the right thing. I felt like I had to share it when I did because my father was still alive and he was still around young children, and I had no way of knowing if he was still a perpetrator. So I felt like I had a responsibility to let everyone know my experience because I wanted to protect other children.
And that's something so key now. And it's a difficult, very difficult thing because there's going to be people that aren't going to want to hear what you're saying, that still want to keep it quiet and don't want to bring it out in the family or anything. But then to be that advocate for other children that can be around people who can be perpetrators, to have that brought out in the open is so important. And I agree that everything is in place to help more children in these situations. Everything's there. But I think there's a lot of us that need to stand up to say, what else can we do to make it brought out into the open so they start going with what's already there? Everything is there. Let's start enforcing it. Let's start bringing it forward. And more and more people are speaking up and things are changing. And that's something to realize. This advocacy, you've been doing advocacy for so many years. Have you noticed a bigger change in the last few years than what you've noticed in maybe the beginning when you first started?
Yes, definitely. When I first started, I was frequently the only group in the room. I would frequently find myself with a bunch of women and one male. And I understood why that was, and it always was awkward and uncomfortable with it. And it's changing because there's a lot of other male survivors now that are speaking up and speaking out. And we are in solidarity with women and men and children, boys and girls, and all of us coming together. That's a powerful force of people that are taking the stand. And women who have been assaulted by a white male, I can be triggering to them because I'm a white male, and I have great empathy for that because my perpetrator was a white male, so I can't stand white men, especially white men in power. Like, "Ugh," like talk about triggering me, like so I get that in a way that's maybe disarming in some ways, and I do imagine the possibility that, uh, and I don't think people should reveal that they're a survivor if it's not right for them. I'm not encouraging that even. I think it's really a very personal choice and it's in the right way and to be able to deal with all the repercussions of it. So people need to really protect themselves while they talk about sharing it. But if you do it, don't, get solid, be in support, be in community with others. Know that you're not alone. That's one of the things that I lived with, that really my inner dragon had this tape that I lived with for decades saying, "You're alone, you're alone, you're alone." It was such a lie. I was never alone, and I'm not alone, and we are in this together. I was never alone. I was alone in some way. I was abandoned and that happened and no one was there to stop it and I couldn't talk about it. So there was a truth to the alone. But the broader context was I'm not alone.
Absolutely. And that's something I think is so key, especially like you said, women, it's been more open about women having sexual abuse done with them, childhood abuse done, but men, it's not been as supportive throughout the years for that. And I feel that support is finally shifting where it's so much more supportive for both genders on that and not coming down and saying, well, a lot of times it was, well, they should have been able to do something, or and it's like there people are going, oh no, that's not how it is, because there's a lot of emotional and control that's done with children when they're going through this. And for people are starting to realize that before it was always like, well, that's their fault. They should have been able to walk away. They should have been able to say something, and realizing the emotional control over the children is so huge and so deep, and realizing that and opening that up and saying, oh, now we understand. I think that's because there's so many more people speaking out now, making it more of putting it in the mainstream, not hiding it behind closed doors anymore. And for me, I feel it's such a blessing at this point for that to be out there, for that to be open, and for so many more, especially the boys that have had this happen, for them to realize they're not alone, because so many of them have been so just set aside and isolated because of this. And it's so good to have this coming out in the open. And I'm so happy you're part of that, also bringing that change. And revolutionary optimism, I think it's huge because it's being optimistic that this can change. And this can change in such a huge way and so quickly going forward. And I'm so looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And
Agreed, agreed. I also want to share quickly just one quick follow-up point, which is that, as a victim, I was a victim. That's a legal term. I was, so I don't identify as a victim, but in the public space, I'm frequently identified as a survivor. And now people are calling me a lived experienced expert. And I was like, okay, that sounds better. And then some people say, well, you're a thriver, and they like put you over in the corner and they think, oh, the survivor thriver. I want to just be really clear. I'm an aliver. I'm alive. I'm fully alive. Something happened to me. I had trauma and I'm on a healing journey and I'm living my full truth and I'm alive. So I want to be known as an aliver. And I think everyone should have a right to be fully alive and fully alive in their power.
I absolutely love that, because so many people don't know what do you call them now? And to call them an aliver, I think that's huge, because it lets go of the victimhood with
Right.
it and puts you into your own personal power once more. You're an aliver, and what else can you do? And like opening up the skies in front of you. What else can I do? Where else can I go? What else can I accomplish and achieve within my own life, because I'm me. I'm alive.
Bingo. Well said. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And I've just got to say, I'm having so much fun and sharing this with people. I feel this is so much great information for people to hear, to move themselves forward, to be able to be that optimistic revolutionary, that and having that ability to be peaceful going forward, but making an impact to change what's going on in the US, but also worldwide, because everything we do affects not only us, the people around us, but everyone within the world. So I'm just so appreciative for everything you're doing. I know we're getting close to, you've got to get going, and I want to give you that space and time so you have time to recoup for your next interview. Is there anything you'd like to say before we close the interview today?
No, I want to thank you for your questions and for the way that you understood and actually expanded my own understanding of revolutionary optimism. So uh, to keep it alive, I probably should have said this up front. You talked about bravery throughout the interview, and bravery is contagious. So if you're brave, then you're inspiring other people to be brave around you. And well, I also should warn you, and I should have forewarned you that revolutionary optimism is also contagious, and there is no known cure, and there is no vaccine for it. So once people get exposed to living on the path of love and living as a revolutionary optimist, it might stick. So be forewarned.
I love that. I love that it's contagious, because it is. It's awesome. And it's so much going forward from now forward. So much of this movement in all realms is going forward. The healing of ourselves, the understanding of ourselves, and the want to change what we've been living through, to change it to something different for ourselves, the next generation. That's so key. So many people want to make it better for the next generation. This is a way to do that, a way to do it in a peaceful way, but to get your point across and to make a difference. So I am so happy that I had you on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And please spread the word and get the book on Amazon or bookshop.org and buy it as a gift for your favorite person. And we relaunched a journal and workbook, which is a guy. It's for people that want to go deeper. There's journaling page, also for groups. There's guiding questions for groups, and I really do recommend living this with others because it's not easy work, and you can deepen your friendships with family or neighbors or book clubs or civic groups or spiritual groups or whatever way that you're connecting with other people, going through a 7-week journey of exploring revolutionary optimism or a 7-day, whatever, like playing with the 7 steps and doing the practices with others could be really fun and inspiring to people.
I love that. And I think that's a great idea. So make sure for everyone here to check that out. You can go on his website. There's unifymovements.org and also drpaulzeitz.org. And all those links will be down below. And so I encourage people and go on Amazon, check out, there's Waging Justice, A Doctor's Journey to Speak Truth and Be Bold, and Revolutionary Optimism, 7 Steps for Living as a Love-Centered Activist. And that's something to keep in mind going forward. Love-centered is so important as we move forward into this new world we are creating right now. And so, Dr. Paul, I just want to thank you once again. Thank you for all of your knowledge and sharing your heart with us because I feel it's so important and I felt it for sure. And with that, I just want to thank you once again. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your knowledge. And I want to encourage everyone to make sure to watch the next episode of Edge Talk Radio. They are on the first and third Tuesdays of the month at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you've missed any past episode, no worries. You can listen to the downloadable podcast or watch the interview on my YouTube channel, Angela Zabel, Teacher Coach Medium. And I want to thank all of you for listening, expanding, and amplifying our universe together. Have an absolutely amazing day.